Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. So David Adeleye starches Solomon Dacres with one punch in the first round to become English heavyweight champion. Let's talk about it. I think it's fair to say that most people expected this fight to be at least somewhat competitive and to go several rounds. Therefore, Adeleye exceeded people's expectations with his performance. This was his first fight back since his 7th round TKO defeat to Fabio Wardley in October last year. It was also his first fight under the tutelage of new trainer Adam Booth. And despite the relatively short period they've been working together, I could see Booth's influence on Adelaye's technique right away. Perhaps the best way to describe Booth's style is ambush fighting. He likes training athletic boxers who can lead with power shots. It's a style which was at least partly inspired by Roy Jones Jr. Now, obviously, many fighters are not suited to that style. They're not athletic enough. But also, and this is just my personal view, some fighters have the athleticism for it, but they don't have the mentality for it. And I might put Josh Kelly in that category. You see, David Haye was quite successful using that style. David Haye has a kind of thrill seeker's personality. He likes to live life on the edge. He likes to push the envelope. He relishes the big occasion. That's what David Haye was like as a fighter. And if you're not like that, if you're not such a big personality, then perhaps that style is not for you, because the way you fight is, to some extent, a reflection of your character, or at least an aspect of your character. And I say all that to say that while it's very early days for David Adeleye under Adam Booth, he might have the character as well as the athleticism to pull the Booth style off successfully. We shall see. But to just talk about the Dacres fight, Adeleye came out very aggressive right away. You could see that low left hand, Adam Booth style, throwing fast, snappy jabs. He went straight to Dacres' body with a right hand. There was an attempted lead left hook which missed. He continued to jab hard upstairs on Dacres. Dacres was just trying to settle into the fight. But before he had the chance to do that, Adeleye uncorked another lead left hook. This time it landed bang on top of Dacres' head, and down he went. And yes, the punch did land flush. It wasn't a phantom punch. Dacres didn't take a dive. It wasn't fixed. The shot landed literally on top of Dacres' head, as you can see from the screenshot here. It's quite unusual to see a knockout occur from a punch that lands directly on top of the head, but it does happen from time to time, and it certainly happened here. It was a great shot. Dacres crashed to the canvas, badly hurt. He tried to get up once, but then fell back on his face. And I'm not sure how many people caught this, but as the referee was administering the count, Frank Warren, who was sat right there at ringside, in view of the referee, waved his hand as if to say, dispense with the count. And as soon as he did that, the referee dispensed with the count. Now, I don't know whether the referee took his cue from Frank Warren, or whether it was just a coincidence. I'll leave you guys to make your own minds up about it. But promoters are not supposed to be dictating to referees when a fight should be stopped. Not that it was the wrong decision, and not that there was any bias going on, because these are two Frank Warren fighters, Adeleye and Dacres. Nevertheless, I thought that was a little interesting. Let's just put it that way. And I'm not saying the Dacres would have got up and won the fight. To me, it looked finished. Okay, again, not saying the decision was wrong, but I just found it interesting that as soon as Frank Warren waved his hand, the referee waved it off. Anyway, this is about as good a comeback performance as Adeleye could have hoped for. He'll now perhaps be targeting a rematch with Fabio Wardley, the current British heavyweight champion. If Wardley decides to vacate and pursue world honors, then perhaps Adeleye can fight somebody else for the vacant title. One name that's already been thrown into the mix, which I really like, is Johnny Fisher. I'd love to see David Adeleye fight Johnny Fisher. And the thing is, Eddie Hearn, in an interview I saw just yesterday, claims that he'd be up for that fight, that he actually really likes the idea of Johnny Fisher versus David Adeleye. If he's sincere, then maybe we'll get to see it. You know, I recently went back and watched the Fabio Wardley Adeleye fight, and it was actually more competitive than I remember. Because the way I remembered it in my head was Adeleye was kind of moving around on the back foot early on and had a little bit of success. But Wardley gained control of the fight relatively quickly and then systematically broke Adeleye down and then took him out in the 7th. But watching it again the other day, it was actually a bit more competitive than that. And Adeleye was landing good shots, certainly for the first 4 or 5 rounds, and looked somewhat dangerous in there. But I think the real difference between Wardley and Adeleye, what set Wardley apart, was his experience. Now, that might sound a little strange because Fabio Wardley had no amateur fights, just a couple of white collar bouts, and David Adeleye had about 20 amateur fights, there or thereabouts. And at the time when Wardley and Adeleye fought each other, Wardley had 16 fights and Adeleye had 12, so there wasn't a massive amount of difference in terms of the total number of professional bouts. However, Wardley had more experience in tough fights. Adeleye was very much in the prospect phase of his career. He hadn't been thrown in the deep end yet. Wardley had. He come through tough moments against Eric Molina, who was a former world title challenger. Tough moments against Nathan Gorman. He beat Michael Coffey, who was a decent fringe contender. So he'd come through against the better opposition. On top of that, Wardley had served for years as a sparring partner for Dillian Whyte. And if you know anything about the way Dillian Whyte used to run his training camps back in the days, it was like Sparta in there. The sparring sessions were brutal. Nobody was pulling their punches. They were trying to take each other's heads off. That was Dillian Whyte's approach. Now, some fighters, I think, were ruined by that. They got damaged in those sparring sessions, one of them being Alan Babich, and another one, actually, in my view, being Dillian Whyte himself. But Fabio Wardley appears to have come through those brutal years sparring in Dillian Whyte's training camps with his punch resistance intact. But he would have gained so much in terms of mental fortitude. His character would have been tested in that gym over and over again. And Dillian Whyte is not going to sign you to a management deal and to continuously work with you as one of his sparring partners if you ain't tough. So I think that experience gave him the edge against Adeleye, because that was the first time Adeleye had been in a tough fight as a professional. And although his spirit might have been willing, I'm not sure his body was used to operating under that kind of stress. And so he kind of gassed out and got taken out. But he didn't go out like a guy, at least not to my way of looking at it, who looked sorry for himself. He looked like a guy who still very much wanted to continue, even though he'd just been dropped heavily. He got back to his feet. He kind of stuck his tongue out when he was on the canvas, got back to his feet, and he was ready to rock and roll. Now, maybe Fabio Wardley, if the fight had been allowed to continue, would have knocked him out properly. But the point I'm making is Adeleye was still willing. He was angry when the referee stopped it. Now, some people might say that was just bravado from Adeleye to save face over the fact he got stopped. Okay, I can accept that perspective. But to me, he does seem like a guy with, by boxing standards, because, boxers are generally more strong-willed than the average person on the street. Even by a boxer standards, Adeleye appears to have quite a strong will. So, as I said, following his defeat to Fabio Wardley, I'm not going to write Adeleye off just yet. I think he's got talent. He's always had that good left hook. He's knocked out numerous people with that shot. Under Adam Booth, he seems to be developing this fast twitch style, which I think suits him. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take him all the way to the top of the heavyweight division, but I think it will help him to maximize his physical potential. That's my suspicion anyway, because he has the attributes, both physical and, I think, mental, that suit that style. So yeah, I like the performance. I thought he was exciting, and I look forward to his next fight. Hopefully, if Johnny Fisher comes through Dave Allen, they can make Adeleye versus Fisher for the vacant British heavyweight title if Fabio Wardley vacates. If Fabio Wardley don't vacate, then maybe Adeleye will get that rematch if the fans demand it. We'll see. Again, these are two Frank Warren fighters, so politics will not stand in the way. Anyway, let me know what you guys thought about it in the comment section below. Did you expect the fight to go that way? If not, if you were surprised by how early it ended, then would you say that Adeleye has maybe a slightly higher ceiling than you previously thought? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, make sure you check out my exclusive Patreon content. I just uploaded this film study on Julian Jackson and Gerald McClellan, where I analyze video footage of several of their fights in the run-up to their historic first fight between two of the most devastating knockout punchers in middleweight history. If you want to access this video along with hundreds of hours worth of other exclusive boxing content, as well as our members chat, just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called the Boxing Brotherhood. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just download the app from the Play Store or the App Store. All the links are in the description box below. And just a quick money-saving tip for Apple users. If you purchase your Patreon subscription on the desktop site or on Android, then you'll avoid the ridiculous 30% fee that Apple charges for purchases made on the iOS app. So if you're on iPhone or iPad, save yourself some money by buying your subscription on the actual Patreon website or on Android, because it's a lot cheaper. Once you've made that initial purchase, you can then use the Patreon app on your iPhone or iPad thereafter to access and enjoy your content as normal.